right, made it here to the train station parking lot. It's a lot more crowded than I expected, but I got lucky and got a spot, and there is a train. But the first thing you got to do, put your America the Beautiful pass in your windshield. So normally it's 20 bucks every time you come to Harper's Ferry, but you get the America the Beautiful pass, and I think it costs 80 or 100 bucks, and that's unlimited any national park for the whole year. All right, so we got our Harper's Ferry map, and I could not find a pen, but I did find a dart. So this is Harper's Ferry. This is the Appalachian Trail here. When you do the 4-state challenge, you start here, take the Appalachian Trail across the bridge, across the next bridge, and down. But we are going to start right here at the train station parking lot, cross this bridge, and then go this way to the Maryland Heights Overlook Trail. It's in my opinion one of the best trails in Maryland. First we're going to go to the overlook, and then I'm going to go the long way back. It's about, I think, 5 or 6 miles total. It's fairly challenging, maybe not by through hiking standards, but before I did through hiking, this was a pretty good challenging trail with some elevation in the DC area. Just another note for Harper's Ferry, depending on what trail you do, there's a few places you can park. Train station, there's a parking lot right here, and there's the visitor center, which is the main spot with most parking. There's also a small parking lot down here, but this is my favorite place to park. It's really impossible to get a spot on weekends, and it's a Tuesday, and I was still lucky to get a spot. All of these you have to pay $20. Here there's actually a guardhouse, and that's also where you can get the America the Beautiful pass. And here I think they just check intermittently. There's a drop box. But anyway, gonna get started, gonna go over this footbridge and kind of show you the sights as I go. All right, Maryland Heights, one of the nicest nicest trails, with about an hour outside DC. All right, well, just leaving the parking lot, you can see it's a little kind of businessy section of town. They've got little restaurants, and you can get snacks. Ice cream is very popular for obvious reasons. Right down between those two buildings, the white one, brown one, and the brick one, is where the trail comes out. And I'm gonna go down here to John Brown's fort. So John Brown was an abolitionist pre-Civil War. Led a raid on Harper's Ferry to capture the armory here. It was a pretty big industrial town back in colonial days, and had one of our first armories. So he led a raid to capture it. But it was put down, and he ended up, I think, getting hung, but executed nonetheless. And then, I'm not sure exactly when that happened, but a few years, maybe a couple decades later, Harper's Ferry was a big town in the Civil War. They came through and seized Harper's Ferry on their march north. I think after this they went up to Antietam, which maybe I'll go there and hike one day. It's a really historic place. But this little firehouse right here is John Brown's fort. I think it was actually over here in this grassy area originally, and they moved it to a different part of this park, which is a couple miles from here, and it was there till the early 1900s, until they moved it back down to here where it sits today. But this might look familiar because this is part of the Appalachian Trail, and I'm about to go over the footbridge that I went over, like I said, back in June. So I'll show you. Alright, well, here is the footbridge. It's called the Goodloe Byron pedestrian footbridge. I have looked before and tried to find out who that was, to no avail, but I'm sure somebody with good Google skills could do it. About 2 years ago, I was driving. There's a road across the river, you can't really see it, but I looked over and there was a train dangling off this bridge. Derailed from these train tracks and took the bridge out. I was actually pretty amazed at how fast they got it rebuilt. It was rebuilt in time to hike the trail this year. So the other thing, and I think I mentioned it when I did hike through here, I don't know if you can really see it, but there is a fading advertisement on these cliffs right here, and it is for some kind of face powder. And I remember coming down here as a Boy Scout, and they said they've tried everything to get rid of it, sandblasting, but the rock's just too hard. And now here we are some 30 years later, still there, just slowly fading. But that was a very effective billboard. It survived long past whatever the talcum powder it's advertising did. So we're gonna walk to the end of this bridge. When we hiked the AT, took a right, but we're gonna take a left and go this direction along the canal. And actually the overlook is right on top of these cliffs, but it'll take us about an hour to get there. All right. So we walked along the canal for a while, and we crossed the road here, and straight across is where the Maryland Heights Trail starts. And it starts pretty steep climb. It's all flat like you can see until you get across, and I'll try to show you a little bit of that. And then we're just going to start climbing. It's not crazy. It's about 1,200 feet total, but right here you start and you go through this gate, and that is the beginning. But I'll show you the stops along the way. All right. So this just looks like a big dip in the field, but it's actually where the Union forces built their first fortification, called the Naval Battery. I don't know if that's because they use naval cannons, but anyway, it was one of the first fortifications in the Civil War that they built up here, about 300 feet up, and we'll pass a couple more further up the mountain. But get here, as you're climbing, the trail splits left and right. You just go to the right, and it's kind of a loop, and it'll get you back to the main trail, to the overlook, if you go this way. All right, so we're coming up on the split of the Maryland Heights Trail, where if you go straight, you go to the overlook. That's where I'm gonna go first. If you go left, up that Blue Blaze Trail, you go for the long loop, which will take you past a couple more defensive batteries, a fort, and then on the way back down, a charcoal pit and some other historical stuff. But for the most part, people, probably 90% of the people, will hike to this overlook and go back. And I think I mentioned it. It's beautiful, as you'll see, but it's a pretty good hike, especially for people who don't do a lot of hikes with steep hills. It's not too long to go to the overlook and back. There is a good challenging hill, but it's not insane. You do see older people and people with small children, and people in all different shapes and sizes hiking it. So it's pretty achievable if you're somebody who's just looking to get into hiking, and you want to do a hike that's a little challenging and has a great payoff, but you're maybe not ready to do something wild like 10 mile of just up and down. But I will show you the next real thing, which is going to be when I get to the overlook. So this is it. We are coming up on the overlook, and it's kind of weird hiking because I didn't bring trekking poles, and I'm so used to it that hiking without them is now a little bit of a funny feeling. But we're still going to make it down. We have a really nice view here over the town of Harper's Ferry. Just take my time, be careful not to slip, twist an ankle, and there it is. It's actually only a few people here, so that's a huge difference from what this would look like on a weekend. And I'm actually kind of surprised given how crowded the parking lot was, but maybe people actually parked there to get on a train to go into downtown DC. I'm not sure. I think there is a commuter train, but look at this view. This is the view over the town of Harper's Ferry. Right down there is, on the left, is the bridge I came over on. And you got this beautiful view of the Potomac River. And obviously in the sunshine, it's even nicer. But we're basically right above that advertisement that I took a picture of or talked about when I was crossing the bridge. And we're up on that big granite cliff. Alright, well, I'm gonna go back and do the loop trail, but this is the payoff, and like I said, it's even more beautiful in person, so you should definitely do this trail if you get a chance. Oh, and up there on the top of that hotel, probably can't tell on camera, but there's an abandoned and crumbling hotel, and I know if you look around on YouTube, you can get some good drone footage of that. All right. So this is the second fortification. I've now gone up the hill past that I showed you when I went straight past it to go to the overlook. And again, it's kind of hard to tell, but if you look, you can see the raised earthen berm all the way around, and here comes on this side. And this was a dirt fortification where they had 30-pounder rifle cannons, which overlook the river and the Loudon Heights on the other side, which is another one of the greatest hikes in the DC area, and I'll do that hike and video it sometime. But I think we're about 500 feet higher than the last one, and you can see this is a pretty big fortification. It might be, I don't know, it's like it's kind of a hexagon, about 40 yards on each side, but I'm not exactly sure what the shape is. But yeah, they were using this for strategic highlands to protect Harper's Ferry from Stonewall Jackson and his army invading from the south. And the next one I think we come to is the 100-pound battery. And I'm not an expert at this stuff, but I'm pretty sure 30 pounds was the weight of the projectile. So it's hard to imagine how you could even load a 100-pounder back in those times, you know, if they didn't have forklifts or anything. But I could be wrong. I guess when we'll get there, I'll see if it's called the 100-pounder battery. There's a tiny little view of the river. It's much nicer in person. And I was right. The next one was the 100-pounder battery. And it says that there was one gun with a 360-degree range. It weighed 9,700 pounds, and it's 1,200 feet up to this platform. It took 500 men, 200 to 500 men, and it says it was probably the heaviest gun at the highest elevation east of the Mississippi. So that's pretty insane. It sounds like a really big gun to drag this high up. I don't know if it got put to good use, since I'm pretty sure Harper's Ferry, like I mentioned earlier, did get taken, and I'm assuming it was a Union gun. I think it said that on the sign. But man, can you imagine hauling a 10,000-pound piece of steel, I guess, or iron up the side of a mountain? It's crazy. All right, I think next there's going to be a little fortification, and then we'll kind of turn around and head back down the other side of this little hill. All right, so we're getting into the ruined old stone fortification. Most of it's collapsed, but you can see those are definitely placed there to form a wall. And look, there's a layout of the fortification. And they never built a superstructure. They used it as a commissary and storage area. But here it was, overlooking the Potomac. Not much views here, but I bet in the fall, when all these leaves fall, you get a pretty nice view. And the path just kind of goes right over the wall here and down the other side. All right. So I was gonna mention this really quick earlier, but on the one flat spot where I wasn't going uphill and out of breath, I met another thru hiker, Happy Pappy, 2011, and I could tell because he had a AT tattoo on his leg, so I just stopped, started talking to him, and that's one of the best parts about the whole thing is the community. But anyway, what have I been up to since finishing? So I finished on the 17th. It's my last video. Bear Hug came and picked me up at Baxter State Park. Bear Hug I met on the trail in the Whites, and just a really nice guy. He lives like in Maine, and so he came and drove 2 hours to pick me up, dropped me off in Bangor. I caught the Greyhound bus from Bangor because you couldn't rent a car to save your life. There was apparently the entire Northeast was on like a 40-mile restriction, so you couldn't rent a car and take it more than 40 miles. So couldn't get one at the airport or anything. So 18-hour bus ride, layover in Boston and New York, and I got back home on the 19th, and my buddy picked me up at like 4 o'clock in the morning in DC. From there, went down to the Outer Banks for a week and had a real vacation, you know, as opposed to the kind where you wake up every day and have to hike 20 miles. There, I was just laying around on the beach, and that was really nice. And other than that, I've been reconnecting with all the friends I haven't seen in the last 6 months. Had a great mini Thanksgiving dinner, except with chickens instead of turkey. Maybe I'll show a picture of that because of how delicious it was. And then I've just been looking for a job, basically reintegrating into regular life, looking for an apartment. Was shocked to find that apartments everywhere have gone up 30% or so since I left. So very expensive. So I've been kind of waiting to find a job before I figure out exactly where I'm gonna live. But yeah, so far I've been doing that, and there's certain days where I'll have a bunch of job interviews and certain days where I just won't have anything, and so I'll come hiking like today. But I can say, if you're somebody like me who's mid-career and thinking about taking some time off for an adventure like this, well, it has not seemingly hurt me on the job market, other than the fact that obviously you know, I wasn't working, but nobody's thinking like, oh, you're a crazy man, you know, you're a risk. If you come here, you might quit at any time. In fact, pretty much universally, people have been very impressed, and the reactions have been, oh, I've always wished I could do something like that. That's amazing. Congratulations. But definitely has not hurt. So if that's a fear for anybody, I would not worry about that. But that's the quick version of what I've been up to, and we're gonna get back to finishing this hike. But I know probably at least 1 or 2 people haven't seen since trail probably wanted to know. All right. So on the back side of the long part, and right up there is the charcoal making pit, and see what it says. Oh, there was an ironworks here that made charcoal for its furnaces, and they made it in the pit. So of course charcoal is what you get when you burn wood with little to no, preferably no oxygen. Turns into charcoal, and as we all know from our charcoal grills, it burns hot and good, and that's what they used to use. Now of course we have more efficient technology. All right, we keep on going down this hill, and then we're gonna get back to the main trail, which is the part I came up after I crossed the canal, and head back into town. And then I'm getting pretty hungry, so I'm gonna go get some lunch somewhere, or dinner, dunch. It's kind of a late lunch, early dinner. All right, I'm ready. So this is one of my favorite signs on this hike, basically talking about how steep this hill is, and it is very steep. It's one of those things you can't tell on camera. But then the very end down here, I'll maybe take a picture, talks about how Abraham Lincoln was climbing up the mountain to this point, and he got here and he was like, no, I don't think so. He just turned around and went back down and didn't bother to go see what I showed you. But this is also why I almost always hike the trail the way that I've done it today, because this hill really is steep, and especially if you're running it, it's really too steep to run up, especially with all this scree slides around underneath you. But yeah, I always think that's funny. The sign just says Abraham Lincoln came here. Well, anyway, battery cut off there, so that may have ended in a weird way, but like I said, we're almost pretty much done at this point. Just hiking back down this hill, and then we'll be going back over to what we've done. But I will come back if anything cool happens, and probably try to record a little bit when I get back to the parking lot, if nothing else. But that is the Maryland Heights Trail for all intents and purposes. And I think this whole thing I've done today is maybe 5 or 6 miles. I can look that up later, and I would say it's a moderate hike, but definitely achievable, like I mentioned. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a chance to come out here, Harper's Ferry, and check it out. And I'm thinking, about what I should do with this channel going forward, and I think putting just some of my favorite hikes will be a nice fun thing to kind of keep my interest in making little videos here and there. But obviously I'm not going to be posting as much as I was when I was doing my hike, and maybe we'll get back to the original purpose of the channel, which was to do hikes with my friends who we formed the Red Flannel Hiking Club together, and I kind of usurped it for my hike because I had the channel already set up. But maybe we'll all get together and do some hikes now that I'm back. All right, I'll get back to you. Back into town. Here's John Brown's Fort again. And fun fact about Harper's Ferry before we sign off is down here on the right hand side, about halfway down, is where you'll find a bathroom in Harper's Ferry. And if you keep going down this street 100 yards, maybe 200 yards, on the left hand side is where the bus drops you off. So if you come down and you can't find parking at the close spots, you can take a bus from the visitor center and they'll drop you off right in town. Or if you want to get an extra 2 miles of walking, you can walk it. All right, well, back to where we started. You probably remember me walking by this obelisk, and there's the parking lot right there. So I'm gonna pack up and get on the road, hopefully beat rush hour traffic home. All right.